All right, guys, this is the review for the final pre-calculus 2023. There are 60 questions on the review. There will be 60 questions on the final. Same type of question. All I do is change the numbers. So if you study this video and study for the final, you should be okay. Remember, the final is 20% of your grade. Okay, this first section, 1 through 23, numbers 1 through 23, is on conic sections, probably the most difficult section of the test. I will be giving you a formula sheet for this. So on number 1, it wants to know the vertex, focus, and directrix of the parabola. We know it's a parabola because only one of the variables is squared. Okay. Like I was saying, only one of the variables is squared. So it's a parabola. Since x is squared, this is a y equals x squared equation. So you would use that as a set of equations on your formula sheet. So you're going to have to complete the square once to put it in vertex form. So we're going to get y by itself. All right. So I'm going to move the negative 24y to the right. And that will become 24y equals all that other stuff. But then I'm going to flip my fraction. I'm going to write 24y. 24y equals x squared minus 10x, and I'm going to leave a space and then the minus 47. Ooh, that's bad. There we go. So you want to complete the square before you get rid of the divide by 24. So right here I'm going to complete the square on the x's. I'm going to add my box. Remember, what goes in the box is half of b, quantity squared. So half of negative 10 is negative 5 quantity squared. And if I add it on the right, and I'm going to subtract it on the right, because when you do it to the same side, you got to balance it out. You add 1, you subtract 1, it's like nothing ever happened. Y'all thought my writing was bad on the regular board. All right. So we got 24y equals, and I'm going to rewrite the trinomial as a binomial squared. And what goes inside of there is x, and then the half of b, the minus 5. And over here on the on the right, excuse me, we got negative 47 minus 25. You can use your calculator for that. And we get negative 72. So you're almost got y by itself, so then we're going to divide everything by 24. And when you do that, you have y equals 1 over 24 x minus 5 quantity squared minus negative 3. Well, not minus negative 3, just negative 3 or minus 3. So that is the vertex form. So our vertex inside with x, we have negative 5. So when you bring it out, it becomes positive 5, and the y value is negative 3. And if you'll look at the choices, the only answer that has a vertex of 5 and negative 3 is choice D. You don't even have to find the focus or the directrix. Okay, question number 2, it's find the equation of a circle. It gives you the radius, that's your x and your, it gives you the center, your x and your y, and the radius of 4. Remember the standard form of a circle, and you'll have this on your formula sheet, x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals the radius squared. Everything is squared even though it's a circle. So since we have positive 5 as our x, we want minus 5 to be in our answer in the parentheses, so we can eliminate a and d. Positive 4 is the y value, the center, so we should have minus 4 on the y, which we do on both of these. And so it equals r squared, which is 16. B is a distractor because it just equals r. Okay, question number 3. It wants the standard form of the circle. So before I can do that, I need to find the center and the radius. All right, and so the center is somewhere right in here-ish, okay? And so it looks like the x value is going to be 2, which means in the equation we want minus 2. So we've eliminated A and D again. This one has B has +5, C has -5. Well, so it's either going to be 5 or -5. Well, if you go right 2, it looks like we're going down 5. So the y value of the center is -5. But remember, we're going to do +5 on the equation. And you can also count that the radius, we really don't need the radius because we already know the answer, but the radius, we're counting by 2s. So 2, 4. The radius is 4, and 4 squared is 16. Number 4 wants the standard form equation of the ellipse. First thing I notice in the answers, I have 2 hyperbolas because you have an x squared minus a y squared, so that eliminates C and D. The center is at 0, 0, which that's why there's nothing being added to the x's or the y's in any one of these. So you'll notice it's bigger in the y direction, and in the y direction from the center to the outer edge we go up 3. So that's little a. Little a is 3, but underneath y is not a, it's a squared. So a is going to be my answer, not b. All right, and if you want to double check from the center to the minor vertex, that's 2, that's little b, and 2 squared goes underneath the x because that's how far we went in the x direction. Okay, question number 5 wants to know what are the foci of the ellipse and graph the ellipse. We're actually going to graph it first because I believe we can get the answer without finding the foci. But before we do that, an ellipse is supposed to be equal to 1. Oops. What I was about to say is the ellipse needs to be equal to 1, and right now it's equal to 648. So to make it equal to 1, we're going to divide everything by 648. So over here we got 648 divided by 18, I believe is 36. Let me double check that. Yep, so underneath the x we have 36, so we have x squared over 36. 648 divided by 36 is 18, so we have 18 over under the y squared, and now we got it equals 1. So x is the major axis because it has the biggest number. So we know it's not going to be C or D because they have y as the major. And since underneath x is 36, that means little a is 6. That's the distance from the center to the major vertex. So I'm noticing on B at 0, and that looks like that's 6. If you look at A, it's crossing at 13, which is not correct. So the answer is B, and we don't have to find the foci. Okay, number 6 says identify the center and intercepts of the conic section, then find the domain and range. Well, the center is at 0, 0, and all 4 answers say that. The x-intercepts are 6, 0, and -6, 0. That's the x-intercept where it crosses the x-axis. So A is looking good, B is not, C is not, and D is looking good. All right. Then on the y's intercepts are going to be up here at 0, 4, and 0, -4, which A and D both have the same answer. So next we go to domain. Domain is x. Now, look, it says x, but they got a y in here. Well, that's just dumb. Bye. All right. So our domain goes from -6 to 6 in the x direction. Our y goes from -4 to 4 in the y direction, and that is your range. Okay, question number 7. It wants you to graph. We have an ellipse because you have x squared plus a y squared, so it's either an ellipse or circle. The two numbers out in front of x and y are different, so it's an ellipse. But we have to set it equal to 1, so make sure you divide everything by 16. When you do that, you get x squared, you get x squared over 4 because 16 divided by 4 is 4. And we get y squared, 16 divided by 9 is 1.78 equals 1. So the center is at 0, 0, which all of these graphs are. I noticed right off the bat that both B and D are circles. Okay? So, X is the major axis because it has the biggest number underneath, and that means little a is going to be 2, the square root of 4. So from the center to the X to the major vertex, we need to go 2, and the answer is going to be C. And if you'll notice, if you were to take the square root of 1.8, that's how far you're going up right there on the minor axis, the y-axis. Okay, question number 8 says identify the conic section. If it is a parabola, give the vertex. If it's a circle, give the center and radius. If it's an ellipse or hyperbola, give the center and the foci. Well, lucky guess, it's a circle because all the answers say circle. But we know that because we got an x squared plus a y squared and they have the same number in front of them. So we need to complete the square twice and put it in standard form. So group your x's, group your y's, move your number to the other side. So x squared and 6x, I'm going to group. I'm going to do this down here, x squared. Oopsie. Try that again. X squared plus 6x, and I'm going to leave a space to complete the square. Then I'm going to group my y's. Group your x's, group your y's, move your number to the other side. So we got y squared minus 4y, leave a space, and the number is already on the right, so equals 23. Okay, so we got to complete the square twice, so I'm going to add the box. Half of b, half of 6 is 3, so 3 squared goes in the first box, and if you add it on the left, you got to add it on the right. On the y's, I'm going to use a triangle. You could use another box if you want. Half of b on the y's is going to be half of -4, so -2 quantity squared. You added the triangle on the left, you got to add the triangle on the right. -2 quantity squared. So now I'm going to rewrite my trinomial as a binomial squared. And plus 3 is what goes in there, half of b. And I'm going to write my trinomial as a binomial squared. And half of b was -2. And over on the right, I think we get 36. And so the center of my circle is going to be at -3, +2, the opposite of what's in the parentheses. And the radius, remember, this is not the radius, that's the radius squared. So when you square root it, you get the radius. And so the answer will be C. Has the correct center and the correct radius. Number 9 wants you to just identify the conic section. You've got an x squared plus a y squared, so it's either an ellipse or a circle. So I can mark out parabola because both of the variables are squared. I can mark out hyperbola because neither one of them is a negative. Now since they have different coefficients, this one has a 1 and that one has a 3, it's not a circle, it is an ellipse. Number 10 wants you to graph. The first thing I want you to notice is it's an x squared and a y squared, but you're subtracting them. So we have a hyperbola. A is an ellipse, B is an ellipse, so it's either going to be C or D. It is open in the x direction because x is the positive one. Both of these open in the x direction. So if a squared is 36, then little a must be 6. So from the center, you need to go 6 right and 6 left in the x direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. C is the answer. D is a distractor because they're going 2 right and 2 left, but that's underneath the y. Okay, number 11 is a graph of a parabola because only one thing is squared. But we need to put it in vertex form, so I got to solve for y. So I'm going to move the -4y to the right, so it would become +4y. But then I'm going to flip the equation. I'm going to put 4y on the left equals what was on the left, I'm going to put on the right, x squared minus 2x, leave a space, -3. Now you just have to complete the square once here because only one variable is squared. So half of b is -2 divided by 2 is -1 squared. And if I add it on the right, I got to subtract it on the right. And so I got 4y. I want to rewrite the trinomial as a binomial squared. Half of b is what goes in the parentheses, -1. And over here we have negative 3 minus 1, which is negative 4. Now, you have to get y by itself, so now I got to divide everything by 4. So that leaves me with y equals 1/4 x minus 1 squared minus 1. So my vertex is at x is positive 1, because when you bring it out of the parentheses, you change the sign, and the y is negative 1. It's out there on the end. So I'm looking for a vertex of 1, negative 1. Well, A looks pretty good. B is 1, positive 1. That's not good. So bye. C looks like it's 1, negative 1/2. And then D looks like it's 1, positive 1/2. So A is the only choice. Also, we know it's opening up because our leader was positive 1/4. You could also graph that y equals in your calculator. Okay, to graph this, we got an x squared, a y squared we're adding, so it's either an ellipse or a circle. They have two different numbers, so it's an ellipse. Remember, you have to set it equal to 1 to put it into standard form. So I'm going to divide everything by 25. So that leaves me with x squared over 1, which is just x squared, and then y squared over 25 equals 1. So this is an ellipse. It's definitely not a hyperbola, so we can get rid of C and B. And the variable has the biggest number underneath it is y, so it should be opening bigger in the y direction. So A is our answer. Okay, question 13. The equation of the parabola, y equals x squared. All right, so it's already got y by itself, but we got to complete the square. So I'm going to rewrite this. Oop, let me select the marker. So I'm going to group my x's and leave a space and put the minus 16 out here. And so I'm going to add the box here. Half of b is going to be 2 quantity squared. If I add it and do another box on the same side, that means I got to subtract the box to keep it balanced. Oops, that's not a negative 2. Half of b was 2 squared. Then you're going to rewrite your trinomial as a binomial squared. So x plus 2, half of b. And over here on the right we have negative 16 minus 4, which is negative 20. Now you're going to notice none of those answers are right because there's a typo, but this is correct. And I've already fixed it for the final, so everything should be good on the final. Number 14, a little confusing. It says identify the focus and directrix of the graph of x equals. Well, first of all, if it's x equals, the parabola is either going to open right or left. Since the leader is negative, it's going to open left. Okay, also, we know that this parabola, the vertex is at 0, 0, because nothing is added to the y, nothing is out here. So we got a vertex at 0, 0, and it's opening to the left. Okay? I want to remind you that the focus is always inside the parabola somewhere. Okay? So if you were to graph 0, negative 5, 0, negative 5 is down here. So that's not inside the parabola. So I can mark out A and I can mark out D. So we got it down to negative 5, 0. B or C are our choices. The directrix is supposed to be outside of the parabola and perpendicular to its axis of symmetry. So it's got to be over here on the right. It can't go through the parabola on the left. If you had graphed x equals negative 5, that would have been over here. We don't want that. X equals positive 5 is over here, and it's a vertical line. So the answer is C. Number 15 is fun. We got an x squared and a y squared. You're adding them, so it's not a hyperbola. So just by identifying the shape, you got a 50-50 shot. So we're going to have to complete the square twice. So here we go. I'm going to group my x's, group my y's, move my number to the other side. Make sure you leave a space on the x after the x. Then I'm going to group my y's, positive 7y squared plus 42y. I think I'm going to run out of space here. When you move 135 to the right, it becomes negative 135. All right. Before you can complete the square, though, you have to have a leading coefficient of 1. So I'm going to need to factor out a 4 on the x's and a 7 on the y's. I'm going to do this down here. So I'm going to factor out a 4. That leaves me with x squared minus 10x, because you're dividing by 4. Leave a space, close the parentheses. Now I'm going to factor a 7 out of both of the y's. That leaves me with y squared plus 6y. Leave a space, close parentheses, equals the negative 135. Okay, so now I got to complete the square twice. So I'm going to add the box. And half of b is negative 5. Quantity squared is what goes in the box. Now, you didn't just add one box. You added 4 boxes. So make sure you add 4 boxes on the right. All right, on the y's, we're going to complete the square. So half of b is 3, so 3 squared goes there. And that's not one triangle, that's 7 triangles. So if you added that on the left, you got to add 7 triangles on the right. And 3 squared goes right there. Okay, so the hard part's done. We want to rewrite the trinomial as a binomial squared. X minus 5 quantity squared. Half of b is what goes in there, remember that? We want to rewrite the trinomial as a binomial squared. Half of b is what goes in there. And then on the right-hand side, let me grab a calculator. We got negative 135 plus 4 times 25 plus 7 times 9. I got 28. Now, you're not done, remember. Well, technically, you could be done, because honestly, I just need to know my center. And if 5 is in the parentheses, positive 5 is going to be the x value of the center. And if plus 3 is inside with y when you bring it out, negative 3. So A is the answer. Now, remember, though, if you were going, excuse me, going to true standard form, you would divide everything by 28. So over here it would be x minus 5 squared over 7, y plus 3 squared over 4 equals 1. There's no need to do that here. Okay, question 16. First, let's identify the shape. You've got an x squared and a y squared, and one of them's a minus, so it's a hyperbola. The positive one is the x, so it would open in the x direction. Looks like we just need to be able to find the center, and we can figure this out. So you're going to have to complete the square twice. So I'm going to group my x's. I notice I'm going to have to factor a 5 out of that, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to factor a 5. Whoops. I'm going to factor out a 5. That leaves me with x squared plus 40x, leaving a space. I'm going to group my y's and factor out a negative 2. Leave a space. Equals, move 38 to the right, it becomes negative 38. Now this is going to be really hard for me to write. So half of b, which is going to be 20. Oh, time out, look what I didn't do. Uh-oh, made a mistake. That shouldn't be 40x. I forgot to divide 40 by 5. That should be 8. So let me fix that. There we go. So half of b is going to be 4. So 4 squared is what goes in this box. And guys, you really don't even have to add the box to the other side, because all I'm looking for is the center, which is what. So watch this. If I rewrite that trinomial as a binomial squared, I got positive 4 in there. So that tells me the x value of my center is not 4. It's going to be negative 4. And if you were to complete the square on the y's, you got half of b, which is negative 4, quantity squared. And that would be y minus 4, quantity squared. So when you bring it out of the parentheses, positive 4 is the y value of the center. So negative 4, positive 4 is going to be answer D, and you don't have to find the foci. So you really don't have to complete the square on the right because we don't need the whole standard form. Okay, number 17, you're going to have to do that though. So you have an ellipse because you have an x squared and a y squared that's adding, so it's either an ellipse or a circle. And because they have different coefficients, it is an ellipse. So I'm going to group my x's, but I'm going to go ahead and factor out a 4. See if I can remember to divide this time. 56 divided by 4, I believe, is 14. X, and I'm going to leave a space. And then I'm going to group my y's and factor out a 9. What's going on? There we go. When you divide out a 9, you got y squared minus 2y equals, so group your x's, group your y's, move your number to the other side. So negative 169 is what's on the right. Okay, complete the square. Add the box. That's going to be half of b, 7 squared. Now that's not just one box, that's 4 boxes. So make sure on the right you add 4 boxes. On the y's, you're going to add your triangle. Half of b is going to be negative 1 squared. And that's not one triangle you added 9 triangles. So over here I got to add 9 triangles, negative 1 quantity squared. So on the left, we have 4, and we're going to rewrite the binomial as the trinomial as a binomial squared. Half of b was 7. We're going to rewrite the trinomial as a binomial squared. On the y's, half of b was negative 1 equals, now you'll notice right now you can eliminate choice D because the sign is wrong on the y. Oh, I also know that C is not the answer because it's not equal to 1, so bye, Felicia. Okay, so now we just got to calculate the right-hand side right and then divide everything by that. So I got negative 169 plus 4 times 49 plus 9 times 1, which is just 9. I got positive 36. So I'm going to divide everything by 36. When I do that, I get x plus 7 squared over 9. And I get y minus 1 squared over 4. So our answer is A. Number 18, I feel like I'm going to not have enough room for that. Give me one moment. Okay, first of all, the shape, it only has one variable squared, so it is a parabola, which all the answers say parabola. And we need it to be in vertex form. So you want to solve for the variable that is not squared. So in this problem, we're going to solve for x. So the fastest way to get x by itself, we want to move negative 3x to the right. It becomes positive 3x. And now I'm going to flip the sides of the equation. So I'm going to have 3x equal to y squared minus 10y. Leave a space. And then the plus 31. So I'm going to complete the square on the complete the square on the y's. I'm going to add a box, and I'm going to subtract that box on the same side. Half of b is negative 5, so we have negative 5 squared. Yeah, that's a 5. Negative 5 squared right there. Rewrite your trinomial as a binomial squared, and in there we're putting half of b. And on the right, let's see, 31 minus 25, that should be a positive 6. But you're not done because you got to divide everything by 3. So when you do that, you get x equals 1/3 y minus 5 squared plus 2. Now, caution light, all right, Crofton right here. Inside with y is 5. So on the vertex, don't put it in the x spot. Make sure you put it in the y spot and you're bringing it out of the parentheses, so positive 5. And that means the x is positive 2. You don't change the sign on that because it's not in parentheses, so 2, 5 is my vertex, and I am done. Okay, number 19 is a hyperbola. You got an x squared minus a y squared. We need it equal to 1, so I'm going to divide everything by 25. So that leaves me with x squared over 25. Nope, x squared over 1, so that's just x squared minus y squared over 25 equals 1. Now, x has a 1 underneath it, which you think is smaller, but remember, it's the positive variable is your major axis. So it should be opening in the x direction, and b is opening in the y direction, and so is d. So I have a 50-50 shot. Since x is the major, underneath x, which is a squared, is 1, so that means the square root of that, little a, is still 1. So you would want to go 1 to the right, 1 to the left, which is a. You will notice on choice C, they went 5 right, 5 left, but that number is underneath y, not x. So that's why that is not the choice. All right, 20. What is an equation of a parabola with a vertex at the origin and a directrix of x equals? So we got a vertex at the origin. So this parabola could open up, down, left, or right. The directrix is x equals 2.75. Well, 1, 2, 3. So if I go over here to x equals 2.75 and I have to draw a line through that, the line would be vertical. Now the directrix is always outside the parabola. If you drew a parabola going up and down, it would cross the directrix like that. So it's not going to be opening in the y direction. Okay, so I can mark out the two y equals ones. So it's either going to open right or left. If it opened to the right, it would cross the directrix. So that's not going to be it. It's got to open to the left like that. And so a negative leading coefficient makes it open to the left. Okay, number 21. It tells you the vertex is 2, 4, and the focus is 5, 4. You can't even start looking at the equations until you know what that looks like on a graph. So we're going to do a little rough sketch here. 2, 4 is right 2, up 4. That's my vertex. 5, 4, so right 5, let's see, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4 is the focus. It's on the inside of the parabola. So my parabola has to be doing this. So that tells me it's going to be x equals, not y. I noticed that both of these have an a of 112, and it's positive, which opens right. So now we just got to get the vertex correct. So if the y value of the vertex is 4, inside the parentheses should be minus 4, not plus 4. And then the x value is 2, and that's out here on the end, 2. 22 says a hyperbola has vertices of plus or minus 5 and a focus at 8, 0. What's the standard form of the equation? So I noticed they're all hyperbolas because they all have a minus, and they all have both variables squared. So let's graph what they've given us. They said 5, 0 and negative 5, 0 are the vertices. So if I were to graph that, we know the hyperbola is doing this in the x direction because those are the vertices. Okay, so if it's opening in the x direction, because over here it also tells us the focus is at 8, 0, which would be like over here, and the focus should be on the inside of that shape. So x is the major axis, not y. So now we gotta find little a. Little a is the distance from the center to the vertex. So little a is 5. So 5 squared should go under the major axis, and that's 25, and that's all you need to know for that problem. Okay, 23 tells you that you have an ellipse with the vertices and focus given, sketch the ellipse. So the vertices, negative 4, positive 3, These graphs were off, so we're just going to go with it. Negative 4, 3, we're going to say is here, but really that looks more like 4, but it's a typo. I guess it's a grapho. All right, and negative 4, 23, we're going to say is here, and these both have the same graph. This is positive 4, negative whatever, so that's wrong. And this is the same. So here's the deal. On the equation, this is not the vertices. This is where the center is. So we have to find the center of this. And the center would be the halfway point, and it's the y values who are changing. And this is, there we go. So the y values are changing. And so I want the center of those two numbers, or the midpoint, so you're going to add them together, divide by 2. So 23, my bad, 23 plus 3, that's 26 over 2, that's 13. So 13 is where we're at there. So that is the ordered pair. That is the center, negative 4, positive 13. Okay? So negative 4, positive 13 means in the parentheses we should have plus 4 and minus 13. Down here they have the signs backwards. Anyway, the graphs will match up on the actual final. Okay, now we're getting into the logarithm section. I believe there's 9 questions from logarithms, so if you have your old logarithm test, you could look over that, but honestly, I would just study these 9 questions because all I'm going to do is change the formulas, or change the numbers. So on 24, they want you to solve for x. The problem is x is a superscript. Okay, so how do I get, let me go back. How do I get x by itself? Well, you have to make it not be a superscript 4, so I got to get rid of big base 4 first. And the way you get rid of big base 4 is log little base 4. So I'm going to do log little base 4 on the left. And I'm going to do log little base 4 on the right. And on the left, log little base 4 of big base 4 cancels, and your superscript is no longer superscript, it's normal. And on the right, you're going to do log base 4 of 73 on the calculator. Let me remind you, let's see if we can get the calculator working over here. To do that on the calculator, you do alpha window 5, log base 4 of 73, and you get all that stuff, 3.0949, blah, blah, blah stuff. And then you're going to divide by 6, divide by 6. So that answer is already in my calculator, so I just hit divide by 6. And I got 0.5158, which is B. Remember also, let's say your brain freezes up on the test, you can always, when you're solving for x, you can always plug it back in the equation. Like take answer A and plug it in here and do 4 to the 6 times that number power and see if it gives you close to 73. Okay, 25 is solve for x. Again, you could plug your answers in, but probably just as fast to do it. You got a log plus a log. You have 2 logs that are on the same side. You want to compress that as one big happy log. So when you have a log plus a log, you multiply what's on the inside. That's called the product property. So we just went from 2 logs, we've compressed into 1 log, and when you have 1 log, you want to rewrite the log as an exponential. So what is the base on a log if there is no log? Well, technically that's the common log base 10. So we have 10, we're going to rewrite the log as exponential. 10 to the 0 power equals 6x. 10 to the 0 is 1, not 0. And then you're going to solve for x by dividing by 6. And 1 divided by 6 is 0.17. So the answer is C. 26, we're solving another log equation, but we have 3 logs. So we want to combine the 2 logs that are on the same side. So again, we're adding a log base 2 plus a log base 2, so that's going to be 1 happy log, log base 2. And you're going to multiply what's on the insides, which is 5a. 5 times a is 5a. All right, the right side was just chilling. So now you have two logs and they're on the opposite side, and now we get to this common sense property. We have log base 2 of stuff equals log base 2 of stuff. The stuffs must equal. So 5a equals 19 when you divide by 5. This is a typo. Should be 3.8, not 38. That was a typo. I have fixed it for the final. All right, number 27 wants you to expand. So I'm noticing inside this log we have a 7 times b to the 5th. So I'm going to separate this, and that's going to be log base 8 of 7 plus log base 8 of b to the 5th. That's the product property going in reverse. And to make it fully extended, remember your exponent has to become your coefficient. So log base 8 of 7 plus, not times, not times, all right, 5 log base 8 of b. So the answer is A. Notice B has a minus. That would have been if they were dividing. C is just dumb because it's not expanded. And D is trying to trick you with the product property. Remember, when you add two logs when the things inside are being multiplied. 28, we're solving for x, and it's an exponent. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to minus 9 minus 9. All right. And that leaves me with 4 e to the 6x equals 13. 22 minus 9. Before I can get rid of base e, I got to get rid of 4. So I'm going to divide by 4, divide by 4. And 13 divided by 4, 3.25. Now, I'm trying to get x by itself, but I got to get rid of big base e so I can do log little base e. Another word for log little base e is natural log. And if you do it on the left, you got to do it on the right. So log little base e cancels. I'm left with 6x as a normal script. That's a 5. That's horrible. I'm going to do natural log of 3.25, which was my previous answer. And I got 1.17865 blah, blah, blah stuff. I'm going to divide that by 6. And I get 0.1964. Hey, that's answer B. 29, we're solving for x, and we have one log. So when you have one log, you want to rewrite the log as an exponential. So the base on this log, there is no base, so it's 10 to the third power. So I'm going to rewrite it as 10 to the third equals the stuff inside. You rewrite your logarithm as an exponential. So I got 10 to the third, and then I'm going to minus 11 from both sides. So that's 1,000 minus 11. You can type it in your calculator like you see it. And that gives me 989 equals 8x. And then I'm going to divide by 8. So divided by 8. And I get 123.625 equals x. But then I notice my answers aren't as decimals, there's fractions, so I'm going to hit math, enter, enter. So it's 989 over 8. Number 30 wants you to write it as a single natural logarithm, so compress. So before you can compress it, you're going to do the power property. So 3 becomes the exponent, and 4 becomes the exponent. So we have natural log of b to the third minus natural log of c to the fourth. And when you have a log minus a log, that's the quotient property. So you write it as one big happy log, first stuff divided by second stuff. And the answer is A. 31 just wants you to rewrite the exponential as a log. So the base is 4. So I'm going to rewrite that as log base 4 of 1,024 equals the exponent. It's just definition of a log. and the only one that has log base 4. So once you identified the base, there was only one that had that base. 32 is a calculator question. You're going to go alpha window 5, log base 16 of 2. It's a decimal. The answers are fractions, so math enter 1/4. Okay, the next section of the test is on discontinuity, like vertical asymptotes, holes in the graph, horizontal asymptotes, all that great stuff. So it says f of x, they give you f of x. It says at x equals 7, f of x has. Well, first of all, let's look. Where might we have a problem is when we have divided by 0. If you plug 7 in there, 7 minus 7, 0, you can't divide by 0. So I know it's not continuous. I also know it's not jump, because jump, you would have to have a piecewise function. And we don't have a piecewise function here, okay? So it's either going to be point discontinuity or infinite. Remember, a point is a hole in the graph. Infinite discontinuity is a vertical asymptote. So I need to factor and see if anything cancels. So in the numerator, I could factor an x out, and that leaves me with x minus 7. And what happens with the x minus 7s is that they cancel. So at 7, since those factors cancel, if it cancels, it is a hole in the graph. Therefore, I have point discontinuity. 34 is a piecewise function. And y equals 4x minus 6 is a line, y equals x minus 3 is a line. So we don't have a quotient in either one of those. So it can't be infinite discontinuity or point discontinuity, because that's when you have divide by 0. So it's either going to be continuous or there's going to be jump discontinuity. And you're going to plug the 1 into both equations. Okay? So if I plug 1 into the first equation, 4 times 1 minus 6, I get negative 2. If I plug it into the second equation, 1 minus 3, I get negative 2. Since negative 2 is equal to negative 2, that when x is 1, y is negative 2 for both equations, so we're piecing them together at the same point, therefore the graph is continuous. If one of those y values had been like negative 3 or positive 12, then you would have jump discontinuity. Okay, 35 is asking about discontinuity, and I know we have a problem at 5, because if x equals 5, 5 minus 5 is 0. So I need to factor the numerator. The first thing I'm going to do is factor an x out. Okay, and then I need to factor that, so I'm going to rewrite it over here. I got x. I'm multiplying to get a positive 10. Either they're both positive or both negative. The middle sign's positive, so they're both going to be positive. So multiply to get 10, add to get 7, that's 2 and 5. Now we know x cannot equal 5, because that's, if x did equal 5, you'd have to divide by 0. But does that x minus 5 cancel with the x minus 5 on top? No, it does not cancel. It stays there. It's a pain in the asymptote. Watch your mouth. We have a vertical asymptote, which is infinite discontinuity. Okay, the next 3 questions ask you about horizontal asymptotes. This is about big old bottoms, okay? So let's see if we remember. You're going to be looking at the degrees. For horizontal asymptotes, you should be thinking degrees, okay? So the degree at the top is 1, the degree at the bottom is 2. Who is bigger? The bottom. If your bottom's bigger, you got a big O bottom, y equals 0. On 37, the degree of the top is 2, the degree of the bottom is 1, so your top's bigger than your bottom. You really don't have a bottom. 38, your degree on top is 3, your degree on the bottom is 3. So if your top and bottom are the same, you do have a bottom, but you're proportional. So a proportion is a ratio, all right? So we take the ratio of the leading coefficients. In the top, we have a coefficient of 1. In the bottom, a coefficient of 4. So the ratio of the leading coefficients is 1/4. Number 39 wants to know about any holes in the graph. So you're going to have to factor twice. Once on top, once on bottom. In the top, We're multiplying to get a positive, so either they're both positive or both negative. And the middle sign's negative, so they're both negative. Multiply to get 4, add to get 5, 4 and 1. You add because the signs are alike. In the denominator, we're multiplying to get a negative, so one's positive, one's negative. The only two things that multiply to give you 2 is 2 and 1, and the difference needs to be positive 1. So the bigger number is positive, the smaller number is negative. 2 minus 1 is 1, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So we have two places where this graph is discontinuous. One is at negative 2, and one at 1. The one that cancels is the hole in the graph. Now remember, you change the sign when you bring it out. So at x equals 1, there is a hole in the graph. So we know there's a hole, so C is not it. We know it's not at negative 2. Actually, since negative 2, since the x plus 2 does not cancel, it's staying there. It's a pain in the asymptote. That's a vertical asymptote. All right? And we got x equals 1 is where the hole is, and both of these say that. How do you find the y value of the hole? You plug that x into what's left. Well, what was left was x minus 4 over x plus 2, and the hole is at 1, so 1 minus 4 over 1 plus 2 is negative 3. Ooh, that's horrible. Negative 3 over 3, so the y value is negative 1. Number 40 wants the vertical asymptotes. Again, you're going to have to factor twice. So we're multiplying to get a positive, either both positive or both negative. It won't let me write there for some reason. Huh. There we go. So they're both positive. Multiply to get 6, add to get 5, that's 2 and 3. 2 times 3 is 6, 2 plus 3 is 5. In the denominator, you're multiplying to get a negative, so we're going to make 1 positive, 1 negative. Multiply to get 21, difference of 4. 7 and 3. The middle sign's negative, so the bigger number needs to be negative. So minus 7 plus 3. Check your work right there. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. So we're looking for vertical asymptotes. Now, we have two discontinuities. One is at negative 3 and one is at 7. Since the x plus 3's cancel, that's not a pain in the asymptote, that's a hole in the graph. So at negative 3, there's a hole in the graph. The x minus 7 stays, so that is my vertical asymptote. But remember, it's at the positive because when you bring it out of the parentheses, it changes signs. Okay, 41 is asking you for the end behavior of the function. You'll notice this is the same on all of these. So as x equals infinity is how the graph finishes. Finish. As x approaches negative infinity, that's how the graph starts. Okay? Because over here, x equals infinity. Over here, x equals negative infinity. This is how it finishes. This is how it starts. So you want to look at your leader. Your leader determines how you finish. Since my leader is positive, I'm going to finish positive. So as x goes to infinity, y should also be positive infinity because my leader is positive. That's not it, and that's not it. So as x goes to infinity, y goes to infinity, it finishes positive. As x goes to infinity, y goes to infinity, and it finishes positive. To tell how the graph starts, you look at your degree. My degree is odd. Okay, so we said it finished positive. And since it's odd, it's going to start opposite, which would be negative. So as x goes to negative infinity, we should have negative infinity as well. So B is the answer. Remember, if your degree is even, if you and I are even, we're the same. So if you finish positive, you would start positive if it has an even function. Okay, the next few questions are going to be solving quadratics. This should, keyword should, be easy. First thing you want to do is set it equal to 0 because we have an x squared and an x. You can't just get x by itself. So that's x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. And then we're going to factor. multiply to get a positive, and the middle sign's positive, so they're both positive. All right, multiply to get 8, add to get 6, 2 and 4. Now notice 2 and 4 is a choice, but that's not the solution, that's the factor. So the solution, when you bring it out of the parentheses, is -2, -4. All right, number 43. You could factor this, but there's no need because you only have one x. What you want to do is get x by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is minus 729 and minus 729. And that gives me 9x squared equals -729. So then I'm going to divide, 9x squared, that's a big deal. All right, now I'm going to divide by 9. Okay, and let's see, -729 divided by 9. Good, turn the calculator on. That always helps. -729 divided by 9. I get -81. So x squared equals -81. Then you're going to take the square root of the left and the square of the right, the opposite of square, square root. Remember that when you take the square root, it's plus or minus. The square root of a negative is an imaginary, and the square root of 81 is 9. So plus or minus I9 or plus or minus 9I. That's how I like to write it normally. And the answer is B. Taking the square root of a negative, that's where the imaginary comes from. 44 wants you to find the zeros of the function. Now, you'll notice all the answers have a square root in them. This is where you're going to need to use the quadratic formula. So, x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Everywhere there's an x, everywhere there's a letter, we're going to put parentheses. So the negative of b plus or minus the square root of whatever b is squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Your a is -1. Your b is 5, and your c is 9. So make sure you put the numbers in the right spot. This is supposed to be the negative of b right here, so that's going to be the negative of 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times a is -1, times c is 9, all over 2 times a, -1. Now, it's been a while since we did this. I don't know if y'all remember, but I told you to do this first. So we got -5 is -5. Do this second. 2 times -1 is -2. Plus or minus the square root of. You don't want to type the square root in your calculator, just the stuff underneath it. Okay, so I got parentheses 5 squared minus 4 times a times c. And I get 61. And it's positive 61. So I know it's not this. I know it's not this. Be careful. A lot of people pick B. But what do two negatives make? They make a positive. So if you divided everything, if you changed all the signs, because you can't leave a negative in the denominator, -5 becomes +5, -2 becomes +2, and plus or minus is still plus or minus. So the correct answer is D. A lot of y'all missed that on the quadratics test. Okay, the next section is on families of functions and transformations. So you need to go back and make sure you have the 12 families memorized and know how to do transformations. 45, we have y equals the double brackets of x. Double brackets, it's got the most stuff, the greatest amount of stuff, that is the greatest integer. Just to help you remember, exponential decay is y equals 1/2 to the x. Rational is y equals 1 over x. Linear is y equals x. You need to know the 12 functions. 46 wants to know which one's the exponential growth. Well, A is linear. B is rational. C and D are both exponentials because the varies are exponentials. So which one is growth? The one that has the bigger base, which is 2 to the x, 1/2 to the x is exponential decay. 47 wants to know which one shows a reflection on the x-axis for the parent function log of x. Now, if you reflect on x, we want to be a reflection of someone who's positive. So x is going to be positive. You're going to do the negative of y. So where do we have a negative y? Well, A has a negative x. It's definitely not that. B, that is not a negative 1. That is minus 1. That's a translation. That actually is with x, so it either go left or right. You think it would go left, but it goes right 1. C has a negative, and it's not inside with x. It's out front with y. That's what we're looking for. That's a reflection on x because x stays positive, the y is negative. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about D. D is log of x minus 1, so that is a translation. That 1 is not with x because it's not in parentheses with x, so it's with y. Y is either up or down, so minus 1 would be down 1. Okay, 48 wants you to describe how that graph is related to its parent graph. First of all, this is x to the third, x cubed. The first thing I come to is a negative. Negatives are reflections. X is positive, so we must be reflecting on the x-axis, not the y. The other thing I noticed new compared to the parent function, which is just y equals x cubed, we're multiplying by 2/5. Now multiply is a dilation. It is inside with x, so it is horizontal. Okay? Now 2/5 is a little number. If you take your age times 2/5, it makes your age smaller. So you think it would make x smaller, but it's with x. So it does the opposite. It expands it, and not by 2/5, but by the reciprocal 5/2. So the answer is A. Okay, 49, pretty easy problem. Domain and range, it's in alphabetical order. Domain is x, range is y. That's alphabetical order. So in the x direction, the graph is going left forever. So that's negative infinity. And it goes all the way to 4 in the x direction. And it touches. So that should be our domain. So it's definitely not negative infinity to infinity, and C and D have the right domain. Now let's talk range. Range are the y values. So y is up and down. The parabola is going to go down forever. It's going to go up forever, so the domain is negative infinity to infinity. Nobody should miss that question. Okay, vertical line test to determine which graph represents a function. So choice A fails the vertical line test. C fails the vertical line test. D fails the vertical line test. B passes the vertical line test. It only touches your vertical line once. Also, this is in the y equals 0 family because it's a constant function. Anything that looks like one of the 12 families of functions is a function. All right, 51. Let me slide it up. 51 wants you to use domain and range to determine which is a function. Now, I don't know if y'all remember this, but x's are girls, y's are guys. Remember the double standard. If a girl has more than one guy, Merry Christmas. That's not functional. If a guy has more than one girl, it's still a function in our society. I'm not saying I approve of the message. Okay, so I'm looking for ordered pairs that have two different ordered pairs with the same x that are seeing different y's. So in A, all the x's are different. So that is a function. In B, -1, -3, 9, and -1, the x's, the two x equals -1s are seeing two different y's. That is not a function. Okay, on C, you have two different x equals 9 is seeing two different y's. That's not a function. And on D, you have two x's of -3 that are seeing two different y's, so not a function. So A is a function.